This is Brian. We got to play RQG tonight, and we're doing our first hero quest. Of course, I let that out of the bag, and so the players are all thinking hero quest kinds of stuff. And we started the session just with, well, recovering Miriam and Irvana, since they took went unconscious and took fatigue from climbing up with all the heat and stuff, and then figuring out what's going on here, that sort of thing. The player who missed the last couple of sessions was running a little late, but eventually got there. And it's on live description where we're talking back and forth and discussing things. When he comes on, giving him a quick recap of the last time he was here, there was a giant spider attack to today. And so they're all trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? How do we do this? We talk about, the different hero quests they're familiar with. Now this is different than a standard hero quest, but in the same way that when you're doing a Lightbringer quest or resurrecting the dead, you go traveling, right? You transition somewhere, and then somewhere through that movement, you transition from the middle world to some other plane. So um, they continue to discuss on what to do next. Lots of speculation. But Juchi, the player who showed up late, thinks, let's search for tracks, a sign of anybody else having been here, kind of thing. And sure enough, there's a set of baboon tracks running off towards one of the pathways, one going directly north, and also that there's a mark in the ground, like a walking stick kind of thing. I think they may have known that he had a walking stick. I don't recall that specifically, but it's certainly a reasonable assumption. And he has one. It's actually a spear. That on the flip side is a staff sling. But anyway, so they start traveling north, and I was using Owlbear Rodeo, and I had imported previously this map that I created, but I couldn't find it, and then obviously over the past 2 weeks, my session expired, so there wasn't anything there. So I had to really quick scan it again, reshape it, throw it on there, and start doing all the markings for the cloud layer and stuff. In the process of moving around on the path, um, I inadvertently clicked on the outside area while I had the eraser for the cloud layer. So all the cloud layer from the outside, like, oh, yeah, quick, fill that in again. And then I had to mess with a couple things to try and get that one space back open where they could get it, because two spaces were connected, and when they're both open, they stay connected and open. Uh, so I quickly learned to hand move things around, cloud, this erase cloud layers. So they moved around, and they went foot north, north, north. Um, at one point, like they cross a path at one point, they cross another path at another point, they continue on north on a different path, and it starts to curve around. And at that point, they start wondering, hey, is anybody? We should stop and rest. We should get something to eat and something to drink. Going, nope, nobody's hungry. No, nobody's thirsty. No, nobody's tired. Because my interpretation of this piece of hero playing is that time is standing still. It's not going by, which will cause some potential issues if they start throwing magic points around, because there's no magic point healing. Excuse me. But they did at one point early on, while they're at the first place. Now I remember Nirvana cast Sacred Site and held a worship service for Arnalda, and then there were some everybody everybody else is an associate to Arnalda except for Lancromai and the Dakafal. Lancromai tried to go up by himself as his own worship service, but without a holy spot, he couldn't get anything back. Since there's no time here, I just considered, okay, yeah, it counts as a sacred time, but we're dealing with, associates, um, on, I considered it a minor holy day because being in the hero plane kind of deal. Well, anyway, so a couple of them got some magic points back, nobody else. So they're traveling along, going, northish, and then it starts to curve around. They cross a number of paths as they're going around, and they start going south. And there was one point where they're doing a cross intersection, and David decides to do a tracking roll again, because once they get on the path, they don't see more tracks, and the texture of the path is different at different places, and the path is different widths and that kind of thing. And as they're on a path going through this cloud, the mist, it's like a tunnel going through the mist, but the mist is light and gives off an ambient light so they can see, similar to the spirit plane, right? Or spirit world. And so, they're traveling along, and David fumbled his roll. Goes, I think he went south. Look at the smudge. It's like a baboon print here. And but obviously everybody knew he fumbled, and so they didn't bother checking. They continued on north, and eventually that path took him around and brought him down south, and came to another open area similar to where we had started. Like the top of a hilltop plateau kind of thing. In the middle of this area is a beaked dragon newt, sitting cross-legged in a meditation. So there's some discussion going on about, do we interact with them? Do we talk to them? Do we just kind of skirt by? Dragon news are so weird you can never test what they're going to do and that kind of thing. But they finally well, David wants to talk to him, and so he finally convinced some other folks. Okay, he's going to go. The rest is going to go. So they all come up, and as they get closer, he speaks in Old Wormish, and they all know a little smattering of Old Wormish. And obviously, the Dragon News speaks it very well, and so I give them that plus 50 to understand. But if they get that their own personal skill, then some special things can happen on occasion. So as they come forward, he says, who is your greatest warrior?" kind of thing, right? And Aresta throws her axe up. I am. And he stands up and he pulls his two little short swords. I forgot what they're called, concons or whatever. Um, he says, "Come, let us dance." And so they do a little fight. He whacked her axe. She was using her great axe. Whacked it a couple times, gave it a couple hit points of damage, um, and was able to get around her shield, around her axe to her leg, through the plate to do a couple points of damage. And at that, he turns to the party and he goes, "Who is your greatest warrior?" And David, not being a smart aleck, but trying to, interact with him in some way, says, "Well, you are." And well, no, I'm not your greatest champion. Who is your greatest champion? And at this point, unfortunately, their second best fighter had passed out in the background. You'll see times I start um, muting him because I hear him snoring in the background. So Juchi, the other fighter, he's a light fighter, if I remember right. But he's good with a broadsword, so he comes forward, and they do a fight, and he failed a roll, and I think Juchi actually got a crit. Yeah, I actually probably not have done that right because his skin did subtract from that one. But if I remember, I was actually a crit. But anyway, does enough damage to his leg to put him down. And at that, he reaches up. Although he's a dragon, he's a beaked dragon who's even not down on one knee. He's probably a tiny. He whispers in his ear. What was it? Oh, this is where my Hero Quest special magic stuff starts to come into play. He whispers. Where did it go? Where did it go? Nothing strikes fear into mortal hearts like the anger of dragons. And this is essentially an initiation into a draconic cult, because we're talking about magic and stuff, right? And I have him roll a d6, and we add his knowledge modifier because it's a type of martial art. He learns the way of the enraged worm. He's going to get some enlightenment out of this as well. A draconic enlightenment. And so he's got this new skill, way of the enraged worm. He rolled a 5, so he's got 10% skill of this new thing, right? And Miriam comes up to him and offers to do healing, and he's just, sure, whatever. So she does first aid on him first and gives him a point, and then it does heal 3 on him, and he had taken 4 points negative in his leg, so it puts him to 0, so he's still down. And I have a reaction roll go on because of that. And then the dragon newt asks her if she can dance, and she says yes, and actually does an actual dance. She missed her roll though, so she didn't get anything out of that. At this point, Jarstakos, his player, had awakened, and so he's trying to come into the situation, and we try to bring him up to speed, and it's kind of all convoluted at this point because, okay, well, this is what has happened, this is what has happened, this is what has happened, and he goes, well, I'll dance, and then, okay, well, what are you going to say to the dragon? This is what's happened so far, what are you going to say? And at first, Jarstakos was going to do a sword type dance, right? He's going to combine his swordsmanship with a dance. And I was gonna have, okay, make your swordsmanship roll and use it like inspiration for his actual dance skill. But he said something to the dragon dude. I don't remember now what it is. I should probably go back and look. But whatever it is he said prompted the dragon newt to, okay, we need to fight. And so the dragon newt did some dragon magic, increased his size, which increased his hit points, which gave him 1 point to his leg, so he could stand up. But now he's bigger and he's doing more damage too. And so they do the sword dance thing, fighting each other, the combat dance. And Jarstakos got a crit on his arm. But he got a parry in, so I had to go through the parry, but it didn't have damage to put his arm negative. So he drops the short sword. That was actually the right hand, so he's the left primary, right? And while this is all going on, he's getting 2 attacks around. Parries with a good one, 2 attacks, parries with a good one. Everybody went before him. He had a strike rank of 7, and they all had like strike ranks of 6. So they're all going before him. But it's like, okay, he parries and gets 2 attacks. He parries and gets 2 attacks. And it dragged on a little bit with Jarstakos, but he finally got him. Well, Jarstakos got the dragon newt. And then the dragon newt goes to whisper in his ear, okay, make your old wormish roll, and if he makes it less than the old wormish, then something special happens. Otherwise, he just hears something which was about, what was it? Something about infected claw and triumphant roar kind of thing, so something he didn't really understand. Did Miriam actually get something? I don't think Miriam got something. Where's my paper? Yeah, no, Miriam didn't anything. That's why she missed her dance roll. So there's an opportunity for all of our players to get draconic illumination while they're here on this hero quest. That's how I kind of set it all up. when things started coming together, and in fact with Argrath actually still at Clearwine, although he's getting ready to leave. His draconic illuminates are going to know something's going on. Plus, there's some other stuff that's going to happen once they get out of this hero quest thing anyway. But at this point, they've got 3 paths. When they came down, a larger one going north, and one similar to the path they were going, a smaller one going northeastish, and it circles around eastish, but then it hooks up There's an intersection with a main path and in the minor path kind of thing. And so they could continue south on the minor path, or they could go north or south on the main path. And they kind of, based on the owlbear thing, that there's something kind of closer. Let's go check it out. So they go north, and this particular spot is where I had planned for the baboon sorcerer to be hatching his plan, right? His magic thing that he's doing, that Arnaldo says, hey, this needs to stop, is going on right here. So instead of wandering around hitting dragon roots in a handful of different places and learning different kinds of illumination and stuff like that, they hit the big bad. And so Juchi makes got a critical on his scan roll, so he sees. Okay, when they first get there, plateau kind of place like the last place they left with the Dragonoot. There's a tailed priest there, and there's the baboon. And the tailed priest is kind of watching the baboon. The baboon's watching something on the ground, and the thing on the ground is a snake all coiled up. And so Juchi sees, hey, there's a snake all coiled up. And when the party comes towards the baboon, turns, he sees what's going on. He shouts out in old Pavik, no, stop, get back, it's almost time. And he takes guard between them and whatever it is he's watching. And I have the players roll a d6. So in two melee rounds, whatever's happening is going to happen. So he casts a couple quick buffing spells, and when Juchi mentions the party, hey, he's got a snake back there, Restra moves forward. So as she moves forward, he does a quick couple of castings, and on strike rank ganked, he's slinging a stone. So she got a special parry. Haven't rolled for his to hit yet, and that kind of hit the time mark for one of our players who's been up since 5:30 this morning, kind of thing. He's done. He's going to have to go. So we left that as a cliffhanger for the next session. When the party all gets together, I'll roll for the sling stone and see how much damage it does, if it does any, to Arestra. She's got that huge shield, plus she's got 6-point armor everywhere too, right? But it's possible he can get through because he's been ensorcelled as well. You notice that he is extra large. He's not normal size baboon. Happy gaming.